I've sort of split the poems I've chosen to read into two rather loosely related collections, semi-collections. The first lot is very much about the sort of dark things that go on in the world, and the second thing is a little more environmental. So I'm going to start with one which takes me back to quite some years ago when I went to Washington and saw the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in the DC and on the Mall. And I was just blown away by it, with just this black diminuendo, crescendo, diminuendo of dark stone with all the names in it. And it's shiny and the reflections come back at you and you see everything in there reflected. So this is Reflections, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, Washington, DC. You reached up and pointed to the name in the polished stone. The paler you reached up and touched your fingertips with cold. His name, one of 58,307, graved into the black gabbro, is the nation's acknowledgement of the gift of life. You have known for 4 decades and more his life was no gift, that indifferent politicians bombing, burning and shooting in the name of freedom had asserted their inalienable right to dispossess. Tokens at the wall, crosses, flowers, flags, unwanted articles of war, mark bereavements. Veterans have left scrawls, unsigned, unaddressed, whose confusion cries out for this, from this numbing crescendo and diminuendo of plutonic dark. You see yourself amongst the dead, unclearly, through tears you cannot name. That's the first one. And another warish one, a bit sardonic, I suppose. It's called The End of the Campaign. And there's a quote from Latin, which is Calgacus, which was written up by Tacitus. And in English, it's they make a desert and call it peace. So the end of the campaign, and end has a double meaning, of course, in this. The drone's high-res images display the shape of the city, its grid neatly rectangular, save for the historic centres, curlicues of roads. But the houses and shops are a vague rubble, defined sporadically by corners of masonry, untoppled by sudden shocks. At first glance, the images resemble the devastation wreaked by a violent quake. BAM's mud-dried buildings collapsed by an unknown fault. But craters in the roads, pipes and steel rods projecting out of concrete, tell of destruction by mortars, missiles, shells and bombs. It seems no one is left alive. On sand blackened by blood, bloated bodies are drawing flies. Now and then we glimpse a rat scurrying in its hunt for food. In Desert Combat Kit, we're on full alert just in case the rubble conceals an enemy with a machine gun or an explosive vest. But there's no resistance after the long bombardment. Amid the devastation, we raise our flag, relax with a cig, and congratulate ourselves on a city at last at peace. What city is left is another matter. And the third poem is The Sinkhole. It's the one I actually start the volume with, but I thought for this I'd put it in a different place. And I was reminded of some of the horrors in various places, and you could imagine anywhere really. I had it in mind the Balkans, but it could have been Northern Ireland, any other place where all sorts of unpleasant tribalisms have really erupt into violence. And there's an ambiguity at the end of this because you're never quite sure what's going on with this. I've just lost the Zoom thing for a moment for some reason.
We can still see you.
You can see me, my screen's gone.
We can hear you.
I'll just do it without looking. I'll sort this out later. So it's The Sinkhole. Animosities live long in this harsh territory, undermined by channels and caves, where differences are bombastic and brutal, teeth for teeth and eyes for eyes. Kneeling, he looks down into the blackness, past the ferns and beeches grown like scrub in the quarter century since solid ground became a pit. He scrolls through teenage pride bearing a gun among men marching the captive to the rim, the shot to the back of the head, the bent body tumbling into the blackness and the hidden river below. The brotherhood carousing with spirits and the roasting of a goat, and the morning after, hungover, a raven's cark rasping in his ears. Are his years with Médecins Sans Frontières sufficient expiation? No priest to answer or confer absolution, only the shot, the blackness, the unfading reverberation. This next one takes me back to the resurrection at the Sandham Memorial Chapel, Berkeley. And I was taken there a couple of years ago and saw Stanley Spencer's murals depicting his experience of World War I, which are very striking. They're all collected there in this one place. So it's a series of paintings we're dealing with. Released from graves, they dump redundant crosses before the seated Christ. To their left, comrades glance up from trenches towards this resurrection, perhaps for the first time believing death is no more than a rest on the winding ascent to heaven. Elsewhere, a convoy bears wounded into hospital. Obsessively, a shell-shocked soldier scrubs the floor, and others under mosquito nets are being told the war that was supposed to end all wars is over, and they can anticipate returning home. You might imagine resurrection would pass down a legacy of experience and understanding, and that emergent souls would have encouraged us to defy those who assume control and demand we beat our plowshares into swords. The risen would be dismayed that their brief lives have not prevented further inscriptions on the scroll of inhumanity. Guernica, London, Stalingrad, Dresden, Hiroshima, Grozny, Srebrenica, Baghdad, Gaza, Aleppo, along with terrorism and agencies' black ops. There's no new Jerusalem waiting to descend. Only when we've stopped the bullets, the shells, the bombs, the gas, can we ourselves construct it from the rubble scattered across those graveyards, where poppies alone retain the nerve to bloom. And continuing the First World War theme, or aftermath of it, I looked up Harold Gillis' pioneering work with severely disfigured servicemen. Amazing work that he did in sort of pre-modern plastic surgery, where he'd get rolls of skin just stuck around the face and leave it there growing until there was enough of it to plaster it back over the wound that had happened. So some very severely disfigured people were given at least acceptable facial marks and so on. And some of the terrible wounds that were done in that war, just from bullets and shells and all that sort of stuff, shrapnel. So it's Tommy at 70, the soldier looking back at his having made it to the 70. So Tommy at 70, 70. You'd not have bet on it back then, me stuck in Sidcup with bandages where shrapnel took half my face. I never saw me worse. The hospital hid the mirrors, so us in there couldn't see ourselves. But we knew what we was like. We'd see mates with tubes of rolled up flesh and skin hanging down and pinned where they'd be stretched in place. The doc told me flesh should take months of growing, enough to cover me face. He was me corner man, his kit better than Vaseline, styptic and a sponge. He got me fit for fighting the next round, doing ARP down the old East End. I ain't handsome like I was, but I ain't come out too bad. Blessed with a lovely wife and 2 great kids who are proud I did me bit. Me mates too had done their bit. The doc, he fixed them as best he could. Some stayed in, some went home, but then just hid, afraid of being gawped at with their patched up looks. Most gotten out for going through hell. No medals, nor Indo fame, but I'm telling you, and I'll bloody well tell you again, they was heroes all the same. That's Tommy at 70. Another one riffing on poppy fields and war. Poppies. Coils of rusty bramble define the boundaries of soil November rain has darkened like blood. Healed deep down in the plyman's ruts, the tiny seeds lie shrouded in black and dormant, far from the sway of empty senses. A drab landscape huddles in the cold. Late in their season, pale shoots escape the strangle of roots. Uncrumpling, survivors flutter scarlet in the flurries, rippling through ranks of corn withering in the summer heat. Pollen drifts in the fitful breeze, like cordite over a foreign field. There's an alternate interpretation to that that's not quite so obvious, which might need reflecting on a little bit. And another one, this going back now some considerable time, I went to West Kennet Long Barrow in Wiltshire, and we trundled up this hill, looking back over Silbury Hill in the distance. And it's a lovely view from the top. But I wrote this poem, West Kennet Long Barrow, thinking about Van Gogh's Wheat Field with Crows. So West Kennet Long Barrow. Van Gogh would have been seduced into painting this landscape. Thundery clouds against the tawniness of barley close to harvesting, the random green of unripened ears, and the bristly awns kids set crawling up their shirted arms. He might have added a straggle of crows as a nod to those whose arthritic bones, interred in this hilltop tomb, became grist for medicines 5 centuries ago. Once a barrier, Sarsens merely pretend the barrow's defence. A narrow gap allows us to enter burial chambers dimly lit by sky. Nothing there now but desiccated herbs, the residue of midsummer joyfulness, or perhaps tributes to the long departed dead. And now the lighthouse. Just touches on the idea of a city on a hill, which has been in American politics, and various people, Reagan and others, have always used this as a motif for aspiration, I suppose. Always never quite achieved, but never mind about that. The lighthouse. The sea is far out, the sand smooth, unpeopled by heavy rain. The overcast breaks. The lighthouse, suddenly lit by the sun, is a brilliant white pinnacle against the dark base of a white thundercloud that's thrusting higher into the uncurtained blue. You imagine walking there as when you believed that shining city on the hill was within your reach. But the tide is turning, the clouds are merging, and all the brilliance has gone. And I'll end my first piecing with the title thing, or the word poem that gave the title to the collection. We thought about dark matter, and then Janice smartly found that there were at least 3 other books with the title Dark Matter, and very cleverly suggested putting an S on the end, which is actually better because there's more dark matters in this than just dark matter itself. So dark matter, and it really is to deal with the hunt for dark matter in a salt mine underneath the cliffs just south of Whitby. Dark matter. They're enhancing the equipment. He's enjoying the free day, sauntering around the Abbey, admiring columns and lancet windows that seem as if a theme from Thomas Tallis, anticipated in stone, is reaching for the blue June sky. He ponders the monks' commitment to a Lord they could never see, but whose existence they inferred from the beauty around them. The glory of a sunrise, a rainbow's brilliance, berries in the hedgerow, the hover of a kestrel, the tracery of ice on glass. He'd learned from science not to twist conclusions by selecting observations. Gazing at the ruins, he wonders how the monks could have squared the core of their belief with squalor, hunger, and disease. A kilometre beneath the grass, salt insulates the detector from extraneous radiation. He sits at the computer, hoping the instrument's augmented sensitivity will allow him to confirm what mathematical analysis has hypothesized, that dark matter bulks out the universe. Experience has taught him patience. Elsewhere, others underground have, like him, yet to see traces of the particles scientists have convinced themselves exist. Like Vladimir and Estragon, they spend their borrowed time waiting, 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 waiting. Thank you.
Mantz, that was fantastic. Would everybody unmute and give him a clap, because he couldn't hear, he couldn't see us clapping.
Thank you.
Mantz, when you get the video, you will see yourself, because you've been on screen all the time.
Yeah, well, I'll try and get myself back, because I'd like
Okay,
to
we'll excuse you while you fiddle about with the technology then. While we carry on. Regardless. So let's all mute again, except me. Oh, such power. Now we're going to move on, and we're going to hear from Cathy. Cathy Thomas Bryant. After being, this is, I hope, Cathy, this is quite an interesting life you've had. After being homeless in her teens, Cathy worked as a life model, civil servant, and childminder before writing professionally. And since then, she's won 28 literary awards.
Oh, it's 29 now.
Oh, 29! Wow.
Even as we speak.
They're coming in.
What have you just won it this minute, Cathy? Bloody hell.
Which only goes to show a writer needs an interesting life in order to do well, don't they? Her work's been published all over the world. Cathy's poetry has been described as Carol Ann Duffy meets Spike Milligan. And her collections contains strong language and scenes of a sexual nature, Look at All the Women, and Erratics. Cathy lives in Manchester, like Mantz, you can see her listings on her website, at the Compson Calls website, for skint and unconfident writers. So she's a very supportive writer for others. So Cathy, let's hear from you now. Thank you very much. Everybody make sure you're muted.
Well, good evening, darlings. Can you all hear me okay? Oh, good. It's a huge honour to be here tonight. As you know, I absolutely adore Mantz's poetry. And I thought Voyager was the perfect collection, and it is, but I actually think that Dark Matters is even better. And I do think that Mantz is the best contemporary poet writing about war. I don't know anyone else who does it as well. Anyway, he'll be blushing and absolutely hating this, so I will get into some poems. This first poem is completely true and happened when I was at a wedding in Tennessee, and it's called Flash. So come with me to a little meadow in Tennessee and a large, well, not very large tent. Flash. Early days of camera phones and the geeks are showing off. I can store up to 16 photos. Like tiny birds flapping and puffing up plumage to attract mates. Far too many of us squashed into this tent. An outside wedding? Really? The minister and I lean against the metal poles of the entrance as thunder and rain sweep the sky with their complaints. Then everything whites out, and I miss a few beats. I'm sitting on the ground. I think I was lying down before that, but I had no mind to register it. My palms and the soles of my feet hurt. My brain is caught in some photo moment that I can't see. And the minister is there too, with his hair on end. Weird. It has just struck me that lightning has happened. There's a smell of burning and, Cathy, your hair! I look in someone's pocket mirror and saw my hair going the wrong way and on fire. Later, the minister and I would twitch throughout the service. Do you take this to be your lawful wedded? That was after the bride had galumphing up to the ceremonial bower, and someone said, Smithers, release the hounds. It's all half remembered, except for one image. As I sat there in shock, the sight of a flock of geeks flapping and shaking their phones, which, I'm sorry to say, were permanently fried. Thank you. Thank you, darlings. Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to do a science poem in honour of Mantz. Obviously, I don't have any technical ability or knowledge or anything at all, really. But anyway, this is a love poem based on the periodic table, and it's called Come to Me to Nitro. Dearest, wildest astatine, let's get hydrogen and frolic. Oh, oxy, take off your chloride and get completely scandium, bearing your barium. I will cobalt your bismuth in kinesis, so sodium that you rhodium. Oh, how you rhodium. Never has there been such potassium between alloys. We will always be ferrous, my beryllium, my germanium, my petite palladium, my sweet selenium, until the nitrogen, my Bunsen burns for you. Yours, francium. Right, that was very silly, but I like it. I'm now going to do a found poem that I actually wrote today. The poet Paisley Rectal, which you might have heard of, she's lovely. She shared an article from Vogue about a society wedding, and I had to turn it into a found poem. If it seems a bit mean, you might think about the human labour, animal suffering, and environmental disaster that went into this event. So I'm not as mean as I might seem. Anyway, it's called The Bride and Groom Wore Tom Brown. Kelly was the denim editor of Vogue. Noah was immediately smitten. They narrowed in on Big Sur, California, booked one of the best rooms at the Erie-like Post Ranch Inn. Kelly outfitted almost every single person in a specific look from Tom Brown, for whom she is now Director of Brand Relations, because she is, in her own estimation, insane. Noah wore a made-to-measure burgundy suit by Brown, the same colour as Ruby, his newly launched hibiscus water beverage, and hand-signed by Tom himself. Kelly dipped into the archive to find a hand-beaded wood grain patterned look from Brown's Fall-Winter 2018 collection. I will never forget being this snatched, she said. I don't actually know what that means. Anyway, artist and creative director Philippa Price designed a tablescape that included antique uranium glass that glowed green under her lighting design, which mercifully included heating lamps. Perhaps the only person without an official duty was the mother of the bride, affectionately known everywhere as Queenie, who wore a truly killer necklace by Picasso and earrings by Calder. For getting ready, I wore these dope feather boa leggings from The Sleeper. They were a gift from my dear friends Emily and Alex at Over the Moon. A reason for keeping this all very simple, the beauty look very simple. I didn't want to be paranoid over the many, many happy tears shed that night. It took us a minute to focus as we were so giddy and in disbelief that this moment was real. Yes. Strange people, strange values. Anyway, I'm actually going to finish my set with a poem not by me, but by Keir, my husband. He is here, but hiding as usual. But Keir, most people don't know Keir for his poetry. That's because he's not a big show-off like me, but he is actually a much better poet than I am, though I know he'll complain about me saying that. After discussing matters with his agent, he agreed to let me read this poem out. And it's a love poem that he wrote for me for Valentine's Day 2011, 10 years ago. And I think it's wonderful, and I really hope you will as well. It's called How Things Could Be. In bed, we bit through the stone we'd become in the days, weeks, the terrible months and years we'd not known each other, or how things could be. Ignorance isn't bliss. Bliss is knowing. And bliss was when we consumed entire afternoons being magnets, north and south, together the only natural state, watching daylight fade and thanking the world for carrying on without us. What once defined us was lost as easily as our clothes. Yesterday was stopped, tomorrow only a thought. This Feb 14th, I had to chisel hours from my schedule, here and there, for things magnificently important. Now I run at the speed of the world and know that I only pretend. I can only throw out words for you to catch, and real words too, ones that matter. I can promise you these things, if nothing else, that if I'm not with you, I wish that I was. That if our skin isn't touching, then it will be soon. That if we're not together, then I'm shifting the universe to make it how things should be. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you so much, Cathy. That was full of love, wasn't it? From the weddings, all the weddings, and then a beautiful poem by Keir, yes.
Yes, even the lightning loved you.
Yeah, that was frightening, wasn't it? Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Well done, Cathy. Very good.
Yeah, excellent. Shall we give it? Let's give Cathy a
Yeah,
clap. Come on.
come on.
Darling,
Whoa, whoa.
thank you.
I'd hate if you did a This Is Your Life in the set and someone you haven't been struck by for such a long American lightning.
So now we're going to introduce Sarah. And Sarah has been performing and writing in Manchester for 40 years. I can't believe it looking at her, I really can't.
Thank you.
Her writing is inspired by her Pippi Longstocking style free ranges with dog kids, Rufus and Georgia. They're lurchers, turn-up stuffing in the wild. She describes herself as personal and political and passionate about poetry strolls and poetry en plein air. Her work is published in many anthologies, from Beyond Paradise by Crocus 1990 to the most recent, Mancunian Ways, Fly on the Wall, and the People's Republic of Mancunia, Flapjack Press last year, 2020. Her collection After the Flood, which is a stormy swim through the 1953 floods of East Anglia, was a finalist in Local Gems 2017, which was the April month thing, where everybody writes 30 poems in the month, one a day. I used to do
You'll
that.
have to excuse her, she's been drinking tea.
Yes, I used to do that. Donald's doing it now. Her second, we're back to Sarah now. Her second collection, When Women Fly, came out in 2019, published by Hidden Voice. So we're going to hear from Sarah now, and everybody, including I, will mute.
Thank you, Janice. Really thrilled to be asked to read alongside Cathy and to promote Mantz Yorke's books. And I've been reading alongside Mantz for must be 5 years now at Sail Out Loud, and have been really wanting to see his work published in collections together. And so I've got both of them, and I've read them from cover to cover and buy them because they're a really good read. So I'm going to support Mantz by, being quite different. I'm going to read from When Women Fly, which my poetry bro and daddy, Joel Sadler Puckering, encouraged me to put together under his independent publishing company called Hidden Voice Publishing. And I'm going to read 4 that I don't read very often. And when I started putting them together, they do go back over 30 years of my writing, if not more. And yes, I was 21 when I first came to Manchester and started performing. So there you go. That was in 1981. So I wasn't 2. But thank you for the compliment, Cathy. So when I started putting this collection together, I thought, I'll put all my published things together. That's what people often do, don't they? And then actually a theme started to emerge, and it was, having been an English teacher, I kind of found myself putting them together in the 7 ages of a mad woman, under the theme of damned if you do and damned if you don't. So there are 7 sections and 7 antitheses as a nod to the bard. Bastard Love Child, Daddy's Minx Girl, Nubile Lizzie, Blue Stocking Pro, Baron Madonna, Grandmother Witch, and Wise Crone. So I'm just going to read 4 from those sections that I don't normally read. And so this one is from the first section, which is Bastard Love Child, which is me, and here's why. Giveaway child. I was one of those children that mums give away and ask for back. I'm already growing up in separate places. I cry in the home, and my mother cries for days. He paces the small front room. Nana tells him to go get me back. One side of my face doesn't grow, and I cannot have breasts now. We are both punished. The oversized pram Nana bought to celebrate, big, shiny, taxi cab black, is too big for a car or a pavement. We walk everywhere in fresh air. I am left outside of Woolies. She's at home, remembering she's forgotten something. Nobody steals me. We clear the pavement, speeding home. I travel the size of her handbag, the size of her suitcase, the size of Nana's pram, across the world, following her men. Now behind that is a long story about being a military baby and ending up in the States and being quite transatlantic. And while I was in the States, my mother had another baby, which she did actually give up for adoption. So somewhere in the States, I have a brother. And while my mother was away in hospital having my little brother, I stayed with a little friend of mine called Grady. And as is the way in the States and lots of places, but I think it was particularly in the States when I was 6 or 7, if you had a friend of the opposite sex, you had to be boyfriend and girlfriend, of course, at 6 and 7. Well, you would be, wouldn't you? So Grady and I used to walk to school, and we loved each other, and we held hands and didn't think anything about this girlfriend-boyfriend thing. But I decided to honor him in this poem because I stayed with him and his parents when my mother was in hospital. And while we were walking to school hand in hand one day, this was in Florida, incidentally, we got jumped on by some local bullies. And I ended up the worse for wear for some reason. And when I got home, well, to Grady's house, this is what happened. So this is kind of to honor boys who get brutalized by their fathers, really. This is called Scarface. Grady is my 6-year-old boyfriend because everybody says so. So we walk to school holding hands, and I have to wear a gold-colored heart locket with his face in. I don't like. I'd rather investigate the big spider cactus and see if I can figure out how to touch them without getting stabbed, so that when lost in the desert, I can drink them. But my hand is still in Grady's, and it's hard to walk, bumping all over. We see the bad boys coming along the white sandy alleys between other people's houses we walked past. Grady froze, so I had to too. And then they ran at us and threw a big hard log in my face. Grady is shaken, and he pulls my hand that is not on my bloody face until we are at his house. His father gives me to his mom to wash my face. I have long red scratches. I might have scars like sword marks for life. Grady's dad takes Grady's hand into another room. I know he has taken his belt off. I hear him belt Grady because he didn't save me. And what will my mom say when she comes home from hospital, all sad after giving away her baby, and sees my face? A sad little tale, but yes, poor Grady got whooped because he didn't save me at age 6 or 7, and I wonder where he is now. My third poem I'm going to read to you is actually has become the cause of my book, because when I sell it, the proceeds go to Stockport Women's Centre, where I have been volunteering for years as a therapist. And one year we were invited out by Opera North to go see Madame Butterfly. And so about 20 women from Stockport Women's Centre and those of us who volunteer went to the Lowry to see Madame Butterfly. Well, it was quite a surreal experience. So I'm going to read this in honour of the amazing women I work with at Stockport Women's Centre, both the other staff and, of course, the hundreds and thousands of clients that they serve. And Stockport Women's Centre is a pioneering centre which works hard to keep women out of the criminal justice system, which is why I'm very committed to it. And it's a one-stop shop where women can go and have therapy with the likes of me, or talk to social workers or housing specialists, and really get a lot of help. Madame Butterflies. The goddess of the moon descends in the night, showering all she loves in white. That's a quote from Butterfly. Madame Butterfly was my mother. She took me to see Butterfly. I fell in love at 8, watching her soar in love, marry a US military man, be abandoned, give birth, give away her son, and commit suicide. I cried an orphan's tears. 50 years later, I return. Opera North invites our Women's Centre to see Butterfly. I sit among 20 women who hardly go to theatre, eating crisps and starbursts. Women who have been abused, raped, violated, in and out of care and prison, who've given up everything for love. We wriggle slightly at the all too familiar boo at Pinkerton and scheme about sweeping Butterfly off stage before she sinks the ancestral knife inward. They are all Madame Butterflies, crying butterfly tears. Thank you. I think I'm going to change my mind about my last poem with a bit of, I think I'm going to catch the ball from Cathy. I'm I always thought I would be a scientist, actually, as a child. And funnily enough, my best friend Susan's listening, and she's a scientist. And when I was put into a tiny primary school when I returned from the US at age 11, I got put in charge of science, which was most peculiar. I have no idea why, but I do recall cutting up a little field mouse. But we were all in one room. It was a tiny, tiny little village school, having been in huge elementary schools in the States. And but I didn't become a scientist. I got to grammar school, and I was so looking forward to doing chemistry and biology and physics. And I didn't have brilliant science teachers like Mantz. I had a really horrible time, and I was so disappointed. And I ended up going over to the arts, and it's a very sad thing that students often do have to decide between the two. But you know, I've come back to it in a way into a soft science anyway, being a psychotherapist now. So I'm fascinated by psychology. So as a little tribute to Mantz, I'm going to do the nearest thing I've got to a science poem, and a bit of a change of subject. This is called Omnilove. When we have replaced my eyes that you saw skewedly, and my murmuring heart that missed one too many beats, and given me more sensitive hands to place on your metal heartbeat, as you reach to place your plastic hand on my metal heartbeat. And our digital eyes do that miracle anew of falling in love with each other in synchronicity. And when we have all gone around the planets and returned to the mothership again, when the ticking of love's past quantum leap to here again, when we virtually wrap thighs around thighs and forget what gender we are, and in artificial ignorance grope like aliens towards unalgorithmically coded wavelengths, when we touch again, will you recognize me? Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That was amazing. I really loved that last poem. I'm glad you included that.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you, Cathy. She gave me the idea.
Yes. Lovely.
And I want to say thank you to Cathy too, who's also an amazing writer, very encouraging. Cathy's Comps and Calls you should all do. I've read most of her books, and they're wonderful too.
Please, everybody, give both of our guests a big clap. So, thank you. And now we're going to press on, and we're going to hear, sadly for the last time, from Mantz. Mantz, have you got your vision back?
Yes, I have. I managed to pick it up from when Cathy started, so that was really good.
That's good, because
I got this stray Zoom screen, just the routine, you know, sort of join Zoom. I didn't know where it had come from. I didn't know whether to sort of switch it off and completely crash the whole lot or not. There was nothing to tell me what to do. But in the end,
it's so hard to read to a black screen.
It was very disconcerting, I have to say.
But no, good.
It was like reading to Dark Matters.
Yeah.
I'm going to unmute now. Mute myself now. So we're going to hear from Mantz.
Yeah. I thought perhaps I ought to just mention the cover on this, because there's a little tale behind that, in that the photograph was taken by Feng Shui, who at Los Alamos Laboratory in Utah or wherever it is. And I came across, looking for something, I had originally thought about putting a sort of star map type thing on the front with a black center to it, like a black hole. And then I saw this one scuffling around the web, and I thought, that star map thing with this stars moved, it must be about an hour's length of time, judging by the amount of angle in it. And I thought, well, I'd like to use that. So I shot off an email, and he said, yes, he'd be delighted. And he said, actually, what I'd really like to is take another one. And so we went out into the desert somewhere, miles from anywhere. It must have been dead cold. Anyway, was stood there with his thing, must have been on a stand and tripod or something, taking all these things. Anyway, he takes his picture and then he's in the middle of nowhere and his car won't start to come back. So he calls for his rescue service, and they said, oh, we'll be here in about 4 hours, and it's freezing out there and this guy's cold. So in the end, he calls the cops, and the cops come and Jack jumpstart him and he gets home. But I mean, he went through, if not hell, it wasn't hot enough for hell to do this photograph. But it was really great of him, and I really appreciate him doing that for me, because it's really nice cover, I think. But then I helped choose it, so there we go. Okay, let's go a bit more pastoral in the second session. And I'll start with hawthorns in Wastwater. Just a simple little thing, but it's all about randomness and strange things happening. Like this poor guy who's died just the other day with the COVID clotting, just out of the blue, you know, it just happens. And you don't know these things are going to happen. So it's really sort of a riff on that sort of thing, but it was long before that happened, of course. So hawthorns, Wastwater. About 35 degrees, Scree's natural angle, judging by the map. You'd believe it more looking up the exaggerated perspective of the fan to its origin and vanishing point, where the roaring wind is flattening mist against gullies and splintered crags. The path winds its impermanent way around stony convexities, contouring roughly round the lake. Here and there, set against the slants of green, rust and clinkery black, hawthorns writhe and cringe, offering up blood-red fruits as if to propitiate the rain, their lifespan determined by a random tumbling down of stones. And while on the walking theme, Arnside Knot, which I've been a number of times to, because a guy I did a lot of work with was a decade younger than me, died suddenly, and his ashes were scattered on top of Arnside Knot. So there's a hint of pilgrimage up there, going up there. But we used to go there blackberrying, not latterly, of course, because of restrictions. There's some good places for blackberries up there. And it's a nice place to get views and so on across Morecambe Bay. Arnside Knot. The lane disappoints. Last year, cascades of blackberries ripe for picking. Today, most are tight-fisted green, the crop perhaps 3 weeks short of its peak. The road to the knot yields only scrawny fruit, less than £1 in my box against last year's 6. I climbed to the top of the rock-strewn slope, stopping at the trees where we scattered ashes. Little time for remembrance, though. Rain's grey drapes are closing on Morecambe Bay. I descend a hair-belled field, exchanging wary looks with Highland cows. This time, there's no white bell striking amid the blue. The rail fare's been poor value as far as blackberrying goes, but there have been compensations. A hedge's mauve haze sloes, peacocks on knapweed's magenta tufts, meadow browns flitting between bushes on the limestone screes, robins' pincushions burning among barbs of rose. We're told a couple of hours exercising each week will keep us fit. This walk has been better than going to a gym, pedaling vigorously on a bike, and getting nowhere fast. Now, another walky one. This is North Wales, near the peaks known as Your Eiffel, wrongly translated in English as the Rivals. But it's above Porthinant, which obviously was an important part ages ago. And it was a sort of heritage view, really, looking down into this, walking down to the beach and back up. And this really just describes what it was there. So it's heritage, Porthinant. Propped by its flue, the building's slump-shouldered end, headstones a grave whose rubbled boundary has been smoothed by time and grass. Rain has eroded its upper circle yard. Rusted, a winch is poised to join the detritus scattered amongst the pebbles fringing the sea. Down on the beach, where winter breakers have battered the jetty to a solitary stump and smashed the plugs of a half-buried V8 back to its corroded block, rocker box tops shine like silver razor shells. The sea today is a slow surge stumbling on the shore, scuffling up the shingle as it scrambles to its feet. Unmotivated to further violence, it seems content to leave disintegration to the inexorable thermodynamics of bacteria, mold, oxygen, and salty spray. A century ago, quarrymen sledged gimlets into the cliffs, tamped powder into the holes, sheltered from the blast, chiseled the riven granite, and loaded wagons hauled high on dipperish rails. The brambled galleries were then benches in a broomy amphitheatre. It staged the sea, the players' smutty coasters bringing exotica from Liverpool and taking sets to pave the way for more. The morning is still and dusty. Above the quarry and Corlish sea, the only sound is the wish-wish of a passing raven's wings. Resin is diffusing from a stand of spruce, overpowering the smell from supermarket bags of rotting scraps. Abandoned, a steel toolbox of spanners, screwdrivers and stockets is a casual gauge for rain that is slowly turning to rust. Okay. And keeping with the walking theme, Dungeness, which I've been to a couple of times and greatly taken with Dungeness, a remarkable place, visually exciting and very provocative writing. So this is just Dungeness, my walk across it. I walk across alopecia grass, half hiding vipers, bugloss, ragwort and random spiderings of bramble. The horizon, like a Rothko boundary between tawniness and blue, is punctuated by two black huts and an abandoned boat. The larger hut resembles a Grytviken whaling shed. Its roof has collapsed. Some wall slats, blown flat, have exposed a spectrum of plastic crates, and from a nail, a pale blue net spills towards sea kale's crinkly heads. Rusted cables and rails lead me from rusted winches to grey lapstrakes beached beyond the reach of the sea, like whales hauled ashore to be flensed. Up close, I see paneless window wheelhouses, lichens orange on decaying decks, the whole sinewy wood beginning to rot, dabs of blue clinging to shear strakes, and the lap timbers easing free from the tight discipline of blue-grey rivets and roves. Beyond these boats, the shingle has been reconfigured, storm by storm, into furrows deep enough to conceal a man. I scrunch along the last ridge of this ever-shifting coast, away from the lighthouses and the blocks of Dungeness B, captivated by the waves angling in and swooshing ermine-trimmed robes up the beach, whilst surreptitiously easing its pebbles to the east. Behind me, the breakers are scrabbling at the power station's shored-up mott, biding their time till the reactor's life support is turned off. The buildings are dismantled block by block, and the mott is finally abandoned to the relentlessness of their assault. So how long it'll be before Dungeness B is dismantled, I don't know. But dismantling is also a threat to the Coast Guard cottages at Cookmere Haven, which is a place I've been to a couple of times. And you get down there and you've got this classic view. If you look up Coast Guard case or the Seven Sisters, you're bound to see a picture of it on Google somewhere along the line. And you've got the Seven Sisters beyond the Coast Guard houses. But they're under threat because the sea is marching in. It takes, I don't know what, a metre a year or something like that, depending on what the weather is. And the government has decided on managed retreat. So the houses, the people in the houses, there's not many of them, have got to fund any protection themselves, or else their houses are going to end up in the sea, like so many of those on the East Coast. So the Coast Guard cottages, Cookmere Haven. A saunter along the riverside path, for once free from the carer's leash. No organising her daily needs, no cooking, no washing, no calls to bring a drink upstairs, no uninterrupted thought, no hurry. A day to delight in colours, common blues flittering round ragwort heads, mauve sloes half hidden in the hedge, blackberries tight-clenched maroon, hawthorn berries arterial red, heath browns on knapweed, lichen yellowing sapless trees. And then a simple pleasure, eating sandwiches in the August sun, looking at the heritage view, the cottages slanting across the foreground, beyond the Seven Sisters, baleen like white. A timeless scene, you'd imagine, yet without defences, the cottage's cliff would in 3 years yield a metre, more if severe storms hit. Below, concrete is holding against the sea, but all around there are reminders of the sea's relentlessness, dilapidated groins angling into the stony beach, shingles scooped away where waves have burrowed under a wooden palisade, steel piling rusted to a vivid orange and pierced by sky. How long can these historic cottages survive? Managed retreat lets them be, for now it's left to the community to resist the relentless undercutting of the sea. So the sea is chewing away at that as well as Dungeness B. And now a sort of a different one, silver lining. I thought this one might serve, and the trends are still as they are, going worse and worse. So it's an ironic silver lining, and it's actually, the title is proposed as a question rather than a statement. Silver lining. The Earth's far hotter than ever we've seen. With high CO2, what quid for the quo? Soon mangoes will ripen in Aberdeen. Glaciers are shrinking, permafrost melting, ice caps are thinning. Together they show the Earth's far hotter than ever we've seen. You worry malaria will burst on the scene like lime caught from ticks. Don't up sticks and go, soon melons will ripen in Aberdeen. Towns keep flooding after monsoon-like rain. We don't need measures, we already know the Earth's far hotter than ever we've seen. We burn fossil fuels and fracking's not green. For decades ahead, you'll reap what we sow. Soon lemons will ripen in Aberdeen. We've tempo boosted the Anthropocene. It's presto now, not adagio. So the Earth's far hotter than ever we've seen. Soon uglies will ripen in Aberdeen. Ugly fruit being another citrus. The last two verses, the fruit are more acid than in the first. It's not immediately obvious, perhaps. And you can go through periods of depression and misery and so on. And some years ago, I had the opportunity of going to the Aran Islands, to Inishmore on the Aran Islands, which is an absolute knockout of a place, utterly brilliant. Just this stark landscape, flat, like a sort of an aircraft carrier, huge thing. But the cliffs are amazing, and there's Dun Angus, the Neolithic fort on the end, and so on. Lovely place to be. The ecology lesson in Inishmore. No trees, no houses, only dry stone walls offer shelter from a northerly wind that even in cloudless May slices keen as a whetted blade. Plants dare not stretch far above the poor soil in the limestone's grikes. Holly and haw merely grow like bonsai from the darkness, their tiny branches tight against the grey fossiliferous clints. Ivy takes less risk, zigzagging its stems along the crosscuts and holding its leaves lightwards, protected from the rip of gales. Crouched on this wind-scoured flat, I'm learning from these stunted plants how to hunker down in the darkness of a cleft and survive. sort of unrhymed sonnet, I suppose, technically enthused. And lastly, beginning to emerge from the general misery of all this lot, Linogwen. Smooth as obsidian, the lake spreads before me, a corrie bowl brimful of night. Skittering light tracks across the darkness to its vanishing point. Your pebble sinks towards the sediment. Dawn pink arcs disturb the surface, widening, overlapping, till calm returns and offers me another sunrise, another world. Thank you.